it all is happening clearly for a political reason, and you can say it's not as much as you want, but based on the meetings that I was in, and with all due respect, Mr. Nicholas,
Yes.
the sign that you held up on the Facebook page, that was libelous.
What sign are you referring to?
I don't even want to give it the time. You know what it is,
No, I
right?
don't. I honestly don't.
About Eric Hines.
I held no sign on Facebook.
Oh, but you did.
No, I did not.
I'll take
I
it.
do not. I did not.
You held a
I
sign
did
and
not.
you said,
No, I did not.
this is not, this is a perfect example of how things are changing. You held a sign on Facebook and you said, this is not how we want to win the election. Just making sure that more people were going to see it. When that didn't work, then all of a sudden this happens. He did so much, Mr. Hines did so much to make sure that Bell Works came to pass. In doing so, as soon as that came to be, and there were many people, including people in this room, who said it would be too crowded, it would cause too much traffic, it would just clog up Homedale, it would destroy us. It is one of the best things to happen to this town, and I grew up nearby in a very, very long period. As soon as it was up and it was a success and everything went through, he got bumped to the side so everybody else could come up and do the ribbon cutting. Now all of a sudden, it's not moving smoothly the way everybody wants it to, and you're trying to find a way to push him out. Didn't he ask for the third-party accounting, the financial accounting, the forensic accounting to be done? Didn't he make that motion? Do you really think he would make that motion if he had anything to hide? He made that, but yet you're trying to censor him before we get to third-party forensic accounting.
That wasn't the motion.
That wasn't the motion.
That wasn't the motion.
An
No,
audit.
that was the audit.
I'm sorry, an audit.
No, that was the
A while
audit.
ago.
That was the
He
audit.
made a request.
Right, but it was changed to have the audit the auditor himself. But anyway, but go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, he's trying to do what he can to prove that there was no wrongdoing.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, Ms. Brew.
Debbie Brew, 15 Cindy Lane. I never plan on speaking, but I can't help myself. Like Mary, I have a lot of thoughts in my head, but I'll start with the hearing, which I have heard compared to the Seinfeld hearing, a hearing about nothing, just like Donna's, a hearing about nothing. It was about an employee that was never hired in a field that was never done. It's silly. It's been a year of wasted time, wasted money on hearings and studies and all to just let this all go by and have nothing be done again. I don't know why all these different interpretations happened with this hearing, because I sat through the 4 hours. What I heard was 4 people knew about this field. What I heard is 4 people wanted this field over there. The infrastructure, the lights in the parking lot were there, it made sense. Then the next part of the timeline that happened was you were knocked off the line. And all of a sudden everybody changed their mind. So it was pulled off, and it was done. And no matter what, if it was put on there, not put on there, as it was said during the hearing, it's irrelevant what agenda it's on. There still has to be 3 votes to approve of this. So, you know, Eric also said he does not have the legal ability to authorize anything. Only the township administrator could. There was, in the end, what the bottom line is, and what I cannot stand, that people continuously, deliberately put out miscommunication to the public because there was no written authorization. That's the bottom line. So if things were putting in a rush because people's schedules, I get it. They knew the next meeting this is going to be okay, but nobody knew what was going to happen and that it wasn't going to be okay. So then it was off. And that's what happened. And to go back to the Donna thing too, I mean, you called for the investigation because she was so horrible and allegations that were never founded because nobody ever said she was found guilty of anything. She left in good standing, and the 3rd vote was you saying she could leave in good standing. So I mean, this whole thing is absolutely politically motivated. And the last thing I have to say, the reason it's politically motivated is because you know that you said after the first day of the first hearing where Fran was interrogated, that you said to an attorney in the room and more than one person, this could have all, I told Sean Golden I will cancel the whole hearing if he will support me in the spring for the 2020 line. You know that you said it, you know that you said which attorney you said it to, and that proves to me, and it should prove to everyone, this is 100% absolutely politically motivated. You were ready to throw this whole thing away because you're not going to be on the township committee, and there's somebody that can't take that you will no longer control the township committee if the other people don't get elected. And speaking of campaign signs, yes, there's too much around. I also think we should pass a new ordinance that campaign signs can only go on personal properties because the township is a mess right now. And I will say that if I had stolen a campaign sign, it would be on the front page of the New York Times. But the campaign treasurer for the independents can steal signs off of personal properties and nobody says anything.
Thank you.
He had approval.
No,
He did.
Hey, quiet.
The juniors, anybody else new wants to speak? No? I'm sorry, you didn't speak, you spoke for the ordinance, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
come on,
yeah.
Jerry Buffalino, 20 Barbera Drive. I'm going to make this less excitable right now because I'm going to ask some questions about the redevelopment agreement.
Perfect.
Sorry. I don't have a copy of the redevelopment agreement, so I don't know what it says or why we executed. I know it's not typical to have a town involved in a financing with a developer, and I assume it's because of the redevelopment agreement.
The financial agreement is the pilot, which is the payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
So it's not, we were never providing financing. The financial agreement is simply the agreement between the town and the redeveloper on how the payments in lieu of taxes will be
But we're
structured.
executing estoppel certificates saying that we're representing and warranting, he's not in default, and things of that nature, which puts a little bit of legal onus on this town to make sure we're advising lenders, quote unquote, whether the developer is in sync, right?
Certainly, that's been
So
part
what
of
kind
my
of
job.
liability does that present to us?
I'm not going to speak in public about a legal analysis of the liability, but what I will say is that the redevelopment agreement and the financial agreement require the township to cooperate with the redeveloper's lender and to assist in these types of requests. So we're following our contractual obligation in what the committee did tonight. This isn't out of discretion.
So is there consideration for us executing these documents?
I mean, the documents speak for themselves, but I think to the deputy mayor's point earlier, the committee has not been looking at altering any terms of the agreement except to allow for the refinancing to occur. This has not been, anything beyond that. So it's simply that minor transactional issue. This is not contemplating any other changes.
Are we privy to the loan agreement?
I'm sorry?
Are we privy to the loan documents that he's executing?
If the township is privy to certain financial documents under the pilot, but they would likely be privileged from public disclosure under Oprah.
No, I'm not just saying, are you looking at them is what I'm asking.
I'm not going to confirm or deny what documents I am or am not looking at, but the committee is certainly, the committee is certainly tasked my office, and we're doing all the due diligence appropriate to make sure that the township's protected in the process.
Okay. And this is no affront to you, Mike, honestly, because
I understand.
you've been a great township council.
I
But
appreciate that.
did real estate counsel at Archer Griner review these agreements?
The redevelopment agreement and the financial agreement were done well before my firm entered Homedale.
How about the current agreements?
The current agreements, we haven't rendered any judgment on the current documents. We're left with the documents
Who
because we
prepared?
inherited
What
them.
lawyer prepared them?
It was a previous firm. The committee would probably know.
Was it our attorney or their attorney?
Well, I mean, it was bargained for between the attorneys for Somerset and Township.
Yeah, that was when Bob Munoz, I think, was here for Dwayne, and Dwayne, it was either both of them or one of them.
The freehold firm that actually.
I think they're in Freehold, yeah.
Right.
I think they're the one.
But the
Yeah.
current documents we're going to sign, the SNDA and the estoppel, those were prepared by who?
At my office.
Your office. So Griner, Archer Griner did these documents.
That's who I work for.
Okay. That's satisfactory to me. I know you're very reputable.
Thank you.
There were certain blanks left in some of the pages we saw.
Yeah, so if you look, the resolution approved in substantially final form, subject to the final review of the township attorney. So that allows our ability to fill in those blanks.
The eligibility requirements, and certainly the certification of who would manage his property, those things.
We're well aware that there are some items that remain to be worked out.
Right. The concern is, and this is a B lender, it's not a bank, it's a financial entity that raises capital on Wall Street and charges a lot of money to finance an entity, and I've had experience with them. So, are there restrictions on how many sell downs they can do under their agreements and things of that nature? So how many successors and assigns you would be dealing with at any one time?
The only provisions that are before us are whatever's in the current redevelopment agreement and financial agreement and what the proposed amendments are. So I can't speak to the terms of Somerset's loan, and that would really be between Somerset and their lender.
Okay, but you're going to be under conditions to notify them if there's an event of default.
Absolutely. I mean, well, that's the main gist of a lot of the documents that I'm sure you took a look at, and I can tell you certainly have knowledge of.
A little bit. Okay, that's all I have to ask.
Good question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Gina Crisione, 35 Rambling Brook Drive. I did come up before, but I didn't get to ask a question, so here I am. I do want to say, number one, that the whole thing with Carrie Ann Calloway does smell fishy. Just wanted to make that point. I was going to bring it up. Also about the consent, when I was looking through the consent agenda, it seemed extremely long tonight. And most of the expenditures seem very appropriate, but one that stuck out to me was the $28,500 expenditure for the carousel for the Harvest Festival. I think that's happened in previous years. What money do we get back from the festival? What are the revenues for the festival? Is it worth doing?
Made a lot of parking.
So the 25 is for all the rides. It's the
All the rides,
carousel,
okay.
the what we call merry-go-round, all the inflatables. So,
But you don't charge for them independently?
no.
Okay.
The only expense for anyone attending is the $10 for parking, which we waive to a resident as well.
Okay, and what were the revenues for the whole festival?
I don't think Bob Ward has finished all that up yet, but the only revenues we get, we charge the vendors for being there, we charge people for parking, and they sell beer and wine, which we get a portion of that, and what else?
Sponsorships too.
Oh, we also accept sponsorships, so, Ward's putting all that together, and he'll have a report for the committee.
Okay, do you have any idea from previous years?
No.
I'm just trying to get a sense of all this money that's being put out, because I've run the Earth Day Festival for quite a few years, and it cost us about $1,000. So $28,000 plus I
It's a
don't
lot
know what
more
the other
people.
expenditures were.
It's a whole different, it's a different.
Yeah, we had
Oh, I
about
know, I
7,000
know.
people there, about 13, I'm just going to estimate that, maybe I shouldn't, but about 13,000 collected just in parking alone. So,
Okay.
but he'll put everything together, the TC will get it, and
Okay.
it is.
Okay, another question is, what I wanted to ask before about agenda item 2019-319. I don't understand even what it says, except that it says Homedale Library. So could you tell me how that relates?
Sure. So
Is that-
the township has a lease with Somerset for the area that houses the library. And under the lease, and it's very common in a commercial lease, there's a provision that if there is a refinancing, the tenant has to sign a subordination agreement and provide a torment. So basically, in our capacity as a tenant, we need to provide that representation to the lender, which basically is the lender saying we're now the landlord, or have the rights of the landlord in certain instances. So it's a legalese document, but it does contain important representations that have been reviewed by council.
It doesn't change anything having to do with the lease at all?
No, not substantively, no.
Okay. And one other question, agenda item 2019-316B. I think that had to do with the Gulf Station on Route 35, on Bethany Road and Homedale Road. Could you tell me what's going on with that, what that's all about?
I'm actually not familiar with this.
I know it's up for sale.
He's,
Yeah.
Fran read a letter. They're basically, they're getting rid of the oil change, and they're gonna put a convenience store there.
Oh, okay. The gas-
Inside
but I thought the
phase.
gas station was
Inside
for
phase.
sale. I thought I saw it somewhere for
I
sale.
believe, I don't know, but I know that they're just putting, instead of doing oil changes and car maintenance, they're gonna sell potato chips and Diet Coke.
And I would just note, that's not a governing body decision, that was a zoning board decision. This is
Yeah, no,
just
but I was reading it, I couldn't make heads or tails of what it was about.
That's
Okay,
all it
thank
is.
you.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Leah Shave, 11 Ladwood Drive. I want to go back, if I could, to the question about the independent audit. I don't know what the exact wording was, but I was here at that meeting, and I remember when Eric called for it, excuse me, Mayor Hines, and it seemed to me that it was an odd choice of dates, that it was only 3 months. And I remember coming up here and actually specifically asking, could it be extended, and that it should be done by an independent investigation or whatever. And I do remember Greg making the motion. So my question is, how did it then get from going to be an independent to extending beyond 3 months to now the auditor auditing himself and it just being 3 months? How did that get on the agenda that way and it was
I did
presented
not put this
differently?
item on the agenda. So, there
Can
were
we find out who
discussions-
did?
there
How
were
did it end up
discussions
on the
with,
agenda?
I talked, there was a meeting held, trying to get from the mayor exactly what he wanted with the, our CFO, our acting CFO, and that's what we came up with. And we put
But
out
here's
the-
my question. It wasn't what the mayor wanted. It was something that was put forth by the committee. So if that was put forth by the committee, I'm asking who then put it on the agenda?
Good question.
And how did it change from what was presented here, what I heard, to that?
I don't have an answer for you, but what else? Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. My next, point is, again, I applaud you for going forth with the censure. I think people are forgetting the timeline of how this happened. The one thing that is consistent with everything with the turf field that's been involved in this town is it's been going around the wrong way. I have to be honest, when we were all in here, meeting after meeting, and heard that this was going to go through the HYA process and the proposal they put forth under Mayor Fratelli, we were thrilled. The public was absolutely thrilled that this was going to happen the right way. All sports were going to be addressed. And then 2 months after, 2 weeks after it was approved, we have emails going back and forth. The meeting did not happen, if I recall, on April 9th because 3 committeemen didn't show up. Not because it was removed by somebody who knew what they were, and had a conscience change. 3 committeemen who did not know that that was going to be on there didn't show up. People are forgetting that. Please go back and look at the timeline before you start throwing things out there and really look at what happened and get the facts straight. I've been to every single meeting. I know what I've heard. I disagree that T&M should get paid for that, though, too. I'm just going to go up there and say that. I think they were a little complicit. I think there's a quid pro quo. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no, yes, Francine. Francine, go ahead.
Francine Campus, 2 Country Squire Lane. I will say that, number one, I just want to commend the committee for finally addressing things and doing some action, because what I've seen in the past year has been horrifying for the taxpayer. I was on the advisory rec committee, okay, which the town paid a lot of money for. Those surveys went out to everyone in this town. Everyone had the opportunity to answer. Those results came back, and surprisingly, the top of the list was not a turf field. So I'll just make that statement, okay? Then after that, everybody's been saying politically motivated. A lot of things have been happening. Maybe they are politically motivated. Maybe Mr. Nicholas is causing trouble for politics. I don't really care. He came out with things that everybody in this town should be aware of. And I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful that some of this stuff's coming out. Because I came to all the meetings with the investigation, and who authorized this, who authorized that, and pointing here and there. Nobody's taking ownership. That troubles me. If you believe in a turf field for this town, admit it, admit that you did it, admit that you approved the studies, admit that you wanted to go forward, and admit that you think everybody wants it. And then I will have confidence. I may not want the turf field, but I'll have confidence in my mayor and the governing board. But that's not what happened, because I was at the meeting where Mayor Hines said, I saw the opportunity at the swim club, and I decided to go forward. And then, when it comes to who authorized work to be done on the swim club, he wouldn't admit it. The other thing is the witch hunt on Donna Vieira. Let's not forget why it started. It was not over authorization of bills, or whether she listened to Mayor Hines, or whether she talked to TNM. It was nepotism, which was brought out by an employee that's no longer here. Okay? And when that investigation came out, there was a number of things very disturbing that came out. Days off not documented. The HR person was part of that nepotism. That makes me suspect as what's going on. But I'd like to know, she left on good standing with a package. Now we call for a forensic audit, which was supposed to be by an independent group, and now nobody's admitting how that changed, and it's the auditor auditing themselves. Who's dictating that? And after you spend the taxpayers' money, I want to know what's going to happen. Is somebody going to get a package? Is the taxpayer going to be reimbursed? Let's stop spending the taxpayers' money and we do nothing with the results. The recreation survey, we spent money, did nothing with the results. I came up here at that meeting and said I did not accept the recommendations given by TNM because I was on that committee. Okay? Let's not waste the money. We did an investigation on Donna Vieira. Was the taxpayer even more money to get rid of her?
Thank you.
Okay? But I just want, it's not politically, and everybody keeps saying we're attacking somebody's family. I haven't heard one comment attacking the family. Mayor Hines, I'm sure. I actually like him very much, and I think he has a lot of views that I agree with. But no, I don't see anybody attacking families here. We're just tired of no transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none? Motion to adjourn? Second?